This audio is going to be based on Attack on Titan. It ships listener X Levi Ackerman. I will use the name Analia for the listeners for engagement reasons. Also, the series will have mature content. Listen on your own risk. Description: Analia is an orphan girl who is suddenly thrown into a new life. She lost someone precious to her and had to go through a lot. But suddenly, she had to join a mafia. Her calm and serene life was put to an end by a storm named Levi, who abducted her on purpose. What's more is that this guy is not a force to be reckoned with. He is the next leader in line. Analia's head dipped low as she stood in the cemetery that lay in front of her orphanage. She took in a deep breath as she sat by the gravestone of the orphan keeper, Sister Nanaba. It was 2 p.m., yet the sun wasn't scorching. Analia had taken a break from the lunch. She didn't have any appetite to begin with, and so she headed straight to the cemetery. The green mountains of the Shiganshina district stood tall around the old and crumbling orphanage. The orphanage laid in the countryside, and hence tall pine trees surrounded every nook and corner of the area. Pine trees with thick bristles surrounded not only the cemetery but also branched overhead the single country road that passed through the area. It was still spring and the weather was quite pleasant. Still, she wore a blouse on top of her favorite navy silk shirt in order to avoid catching a cold. She gripped the hem of her skirt and tucked it in her long fishtail skirt that flowed merrily in the cold and fresh wind. Analia was just a petite girl, even though she was an adult now. She had been fortunate enough to spend her 18th birthday with Sister Nanaba after she passed away. Analia tied her long and rough hair back into a messy bun with the help of a stem rose that she had personally picked up for her sister from the small garden that they had planted all by themselves. Her hazel eyes searched for a small basket that she had placed on the ground. Her thick boots crunched on these leaves as she picked up her basket. The most beautiful out of all of my children, Analia, Sister Nanaba used to say. With her hazel eyes and black hair, she used to stand out a lot. Sister Nanaba was the only one who had been a true friend for Analia. She cared for her like a mother. She had short light hair styled in an undercut with bangs. Moreover, she had blue eyes that always reminded Analia of the blueberries which the children of their orphanage seldomly had the chance to relish. Josh and Daisy often used to bully Analia for her chocolates. Even though Analia was one of the eldest child among the orphans, she never protested or acted like the elder one. The other two were Raven and Filori, but they never considered her a part of their family. Sister Nanaba was a strong woman. She always managed to help her out and defend her at all costs. She even used to scold Analia's bullies, but that didn't stop them. Analia considered all 15 children a part of her family, even though they treated her as an outcast. But sister had certainly taught her quite well, all that an adult girl needed to know. And Analia was quite smart too. but she had acute cystic fibrosis, a disease which prevented her lungs and pancreas from working properly. Though the disease could be cured, but they were always short on funds. Nanaba had to work hard for all of them, and Analia respected her for that. She was always calm and composing even under a lot of stress. Yet, she still managed to care for them all and provide them at least 2 meals a day. The only other source of funds for them was the corrupt Reeves mayor of the Shiganshina district that occasionally used to pay them a visit to donate some money. The new sister had arrived today, and Analia had heard Demo Reeves, the mayor, discussing this issue with Sister Nanaba when she was sick and taking her last breaths in her room. Nanaba died of pneumonia last week, the last time Analia met her when she paid her a visit. Sister had told her, "Anna, always trust in yourself, and I hope that one day you will stand up for yourself. I hope you will understand that you should love only those people who are deserving enough for it. If I'm gone, then take care of yourself. Okay?" Analia had just brushed this aside, as she never wanted to think that the sister will be leaving her all alone in this cruel world. Analia started walking back to the 2-story orphanage. The orphanage looked like a bleak spot in the beautiful scenery that surrounded it. The plaster was flaking off everywhere, just like happiness seemed to be flaking off in her life. She knew that she was alone now. Her heart ached with pain, yet she forced away those tears welling up in her eyes. Although she was an orphan, but the pain of losing a loved one grieved her deeply. Now there was no one to wipe away those tears. She had to do it herself now. The only person that truly cared for her was gone, and she held back tremors as she approached the back door of the orphanage. The orphanage was surrounded by low wooden fences, and she at once glanced at the small garden that lay in the backyard and stood in a shock. The flowers she had planted with the sister had been bashed by large cobblestones. The dandelions, the daisies, and those beautiful stem roses lay crushed on the dirt. Fillory and Sean stood by the garden laughing their heads off, and Analia clamped her hand on her mouth as she kept herself from pulling her hair out. It must have been their task. Analia was completely aware that their constant torments on her will continue with even more ruthlessness, as Nanaba was gone now. They will make sure to make her feel even worse, and Analia was not prepared for that. All she wanted to do was ignore them. She didn't want to fight them now. Whether they all considered her as an outcast or not, she still thought of all of them as a family. She entered the back door and walked across the ground floor halls. She glanced in the dining hall, but no one was there. Beside the dining hall, there were separate bathrooms for boys and girls. Next was their classroom, and then their playroom. On the other side of the long hallway was the sister's office. The bedrooms were on the first floor. She forbade herself from going into the playroom where most of the children were already gathered. She peeked a little to have a glance on everyone. Raven, who was also 18, shouted at the top of her lungs. Her blonde hair bounced as her green eyes twinkled with mischief. Hey, why don't we spread glue on that sick jerk's bed? And all she got was cheers and whoops as approvals. Raven had always teased Analia for her disease. Analia was completely fine, except for the fact that she couldn't run or perform exercises for long hours. But that didn't stop Raven from ever making fun of her. Analia turned swiftly as her eyes stung with tears. She would never be able to fight against them. Analia accepted that, and she ducked into the classroom as she waited for their evening classes. She knew that the new sister would be here soon, and they would have to introduce themselves instead of having their normal class. The clock struck 4 p.m. and everyone gathered into the big classroom. All of them took their seats, whereas Analia remained seated in a corner. They all passed her nasty glances as she fiddled with her hands. It wasn't as if everybody hated her. She was a nice girl. She never fought anyone during that time that she had spent in the orphanage since her childhood. But the few bullies even harassed the children who tried to talk to her. And so Analia herself started avoiding them all. The new sister entered in her white nun dress, which was similar to what Sister Nanaba used to wear. The mayor, Demo Reeves, stepped inside the class in tow, and a sturdy-looking bodyguard with a black mask followed him. Analia was quite surprised. She thought it was stupid to keep such a short bodyguard on duty. The bodyguard's hair were also styled in an undercut, which reminded her of her sister. Yet, his hair was much darker. But for such a short man, he looked quite intimidating, and his black mask concealed most of his face. All the children stood up to greet them, and the new sister smiled as she spoke in a low voice. My name is Sister Rico Berzanska. I will be taking care of you all from now on.